Recently, Matt Reeves talked about Ben Affleck's The Batman script. Well, some of it. More right after this. Alright, what's happening, people? K-Wing here, and today's Bat News, we're talking about Matt Reeves' interview, talking about his creative process, how the Batman happened, and how he basically rejected Ben Affleck's Batman script. Now, you know, about a few days ago, or was it a weekend ago? It was a while ago. I posted my findings on the Batman story by Ben Affleck, featuring Deathstroke, Batgirl, and other DCEU characters. Now, there's some people that are going around saying that the script that I posted is bogus. That's not true, because the actor who played Deathstroke went into more details who the DCEU characters were that Matt Reeves said, no, I don't want to do this. But basically, Matt Reeves was brought in to direct the Batman because Ben Affleck was basically overwhelmed with what was going on. And they really wanted to use the guy who was doing the Planet of the Apes reboot. Even Ben Affleck was very excited about the guy. Now, the script that, of course, Matt Reeves saw was Ben Affleck and Geoff Johns, the Batman, and nobody knows how far along it really was. If this was the revision by the Argo writer, because there is a version where Ben's Argo writer rewrote a lot of the script, because Geoff Johns and Ben were going back and forth. Deathstroke was still the baddie. Batgirl was going to show up, but a lot of the different things changed, from David Finch's The Game to all kinds of things. But mostly, Deathstroke was the big bad, and lots of DCEU characters were going to show up. And this presented a problem for Matt Reeves, because he had his own vision and the Batman story that he wanted to tell, originally with Ben Affleck under the cowl. But let's do this in his own words, shall we? I read a script that they had, and it was a totally valid take on the movie. It was very action-driven. It was very deeply connected to the DCEU, with other major characters from other movies and comics popping up. I just knew that when I read this particular script, it was not the way that I wanted to go about it, explains Matt Reeves. He continues, I said, look, maybe I'm not the person for this. I explained to them why I love Batman. I told them that there have been so many great movies, but if I were to do this, I'd have to make it personal. That I understood what I was going to do with it, so that I know where to put the camera, so that I know what to tell the others, so that I know what the story should be. This take, pointing at Ben's script, is totally valid and very exciting. It almost feels like James Bondian, but it's not something that I relate to, said Matt Reeves. Now, this goes back to what Jay Olivia and other people, Kevin Smith, have said about the Batman script, as I reported a little while ago. It was a very action-packed movie where Ben Affleck and Deathstroke would go about things kind of like Arkham Origins, but at its heart, it was also a horror movie where Deathstroke would be a horror movie shark, going after Batman's loved ones, his allies, and it'd be a very terrifying but action-packed movie. This was the movie that Ben wanted to do as a Batman fan and as a fan of the Arkham games. Now, Matt Reeves has a different take of Batman that we're going to see. It's a very detective noir-driven character. Matt Reeves was in love with the animated series. Robert Pattinson also is a big fan of Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Yeah, Ben has mentioned things about Mask of the Phantasm, but more or less, he has a lot of love for the Arkham games, mostly Arkham Origins. When he was actually pitching the idea of casting Deathstroke, which was Joe Manganiello, I believe, or Manganiello, they were sitting down and they watched the Arkham Origins Deathstroke teaser where Batman and Deathstroke were fighting at Dixon Docks. So that is kind of where Ben's mindset was. Whereas Matt Reeves, he's looking for a different take, a completely different version of Batman. And originally, yeah, Ben kind of fit that mold for him. But as he continued to develop this idea, by the end of 2017, he was already pretty much set in his mind that I need a younger Batman. I'd like Ben to stay on and maybe do like the narration, because he was, trying to include as much Batman dialogue as possible. But of course, eventually that just did not work out, and the story became completely something different, and Ben just didn't fit the mold anymore, and the casting process began, and that's how we got Robert Pattinson. But the movie almost wasn't made. In, of course, the director's own words, he was very adamant when he was speaking to Warner Brothers about, I'm not really interested in this, and he was trying to segue himself out, being like, thanks for the interest, but maybe you should find another director to work with Ben because this is not going to work for me, and here's why. So, look, I would love to do this, and if you're interested, I would really like to get involved and find a way to take the story and make it very, very personal, and get to the place I want Batman to be. To make it a Batman story and give him the arc and have the story rock him to his very core. It's not going to be another origin story, not with Ben already in the character, but that's what I would do, is what Reeves told the studios. Before he was done, Matt says, look, there's another thing. This is why I think you're not going to want me to direct this movie. I can't even tell you what the story is right now for months because I have to finish the Apes movie. And to my utter shock and surprise, they said, you know what? We really would like you to do this, and we will wait. And that right there is just, it's upsetting because Ben wanted as much time as he could to work on his Batman project that he started in probably 2015 with Jeff Johns. And the studio just did not let the guy have any breathing room. And here it was, Matt Reeves was still finishing up one of the last Planet of the Apes movies around that time, had no idea of a Batman story except that he had the passion for it and he wanted to do it. And the studios was like, yeah, whenever you're ready to do this, we're going to do this. And, at the same time, it's just, I don't know what to think about that. That's kind of sad for me because when you know what happened with Ben, when you know what happened to his Batman versus Deathstroke movie, when you know what happened to the Deathstroke actor, and all the other people attached and the different cameos we were going to have and the story, it just, I don't know. It really feels like Warner Brothers doesn't really know what they're doing half the time. I'm glad Matt Reeves got his vision. I'm glad that James Gunn got his vision. I just wish that Ben Affleck was given the same courtesy back in the day. But like I've been saying before, what happened to Ben has been a boon for so many directors because they stand firm when they want to make something at DC. They tell DC the same things that Ben was trying to get. Creative freedom, left alone, the movie will be done when it'll be done. Don't lock me into a date for when the film needs to release. I'll tell you when the film is done, and I'll show it to you. And, maybe someday Ben will finally get to make his movie, but who knows? He just doesn't have the passion for the character anymore, and it shows. But if he really enjoyed working on the Flash movie and he says it's some of the best scenes he's ever done as his character, then maybe we will finally get to see the Batman that Ben Affleck wanted to show us. Not so much from his R-rated movie, but, from the character arc that he was trying to go and his redemption arc that was going to be planned out from Justice League 2, and Justice League Part 3. But yeah, that's pretty much it, in Matt Reeves' own words, why he took over for the Batman. He came, he met with Ben, they discussed the script. He thought the script was amazing compared to all the people that we have talked about who've seen the script, and me for leaking parts of the script. It was a very action-packed thrill ride, very James Bond-like movie. When he was probably going like James Bond, he was probably going more like the Daniel Craig version of, Batman in his mind. When I heard parts of the script, and I was kind of on the edge of my seat listening to some of the things and some of the stuff that I shared with you guys, it was a very heavy-hitting, brutal, action-oriented drama, in a sense, where Batman fights Deathstroke in the beginning of the movie, Batman confronts Deathstroke when he's killing all these people as a serial killer, and then they had this major action-packed finale where even parts of Gotham end up being destroyed. So that, to me, I really think that Matt Reeves was describing a Daniel Craig James Bond. I think he was really going with the mindset, okay, this is like a modern James Bondian type movie, but with Ben Affleck as Batman. And maybe also he had ideas when he was reading the script because of Ben's accountant movie. And I think Ben and Jeff Johns were also incorporating some of that into the Batman script because there was just a lot of stuff in there. He also, which is surprising to me, he didn't want to use the characters that were in the DCEU, mainly because probably he was wanting to keep the movie very low budget And if you brought in all these different stars who had like big contracts with Warner Brothers, like Jared Leto and Margot Robbie, and maybe Henry Cavill, although I really don't think the Justice League was going to be involved in the movie, according to things that Joe has said and things that Jeff Johns and Ben. This was very much going to be a Batman story, but it was a DCEU Batman, so J.K. Simmons would have been back, Jeremy Irons. You would have had some Arkham villains show up because some of the movie took place in Arkham. So, Ben's movie, not really good for the studio in terms of, like, their payout for the actors. Whereas, when you're building up a fresh universe like Matt Reeves did with his Batman movie, you're hiring new people, you have smaller contracts, and as you build up this world, these characters are going to get more expensive. But bringing in established DCU characters and, trying to do them justice and not really hating the script, but just kind of like, no, I don't want to do this. I have my own version I want to tell. This is Arkham Batman. I want to tell live-action animated series Batman. And I think one of the core reasons, too, why Matt Reeves rejected, and this is just me thinking out loud, is since Matt Reeves is a very big animated series Bruce Timm person, that's a Batman that never is killed, ever. No matter what's happened to the character, he has never given in to that darkness and fallen into the abyss, as Alfred tells Batman in the animated series. He walks that tightrope every night. That's the Batman you're going to see in Matt Reeves' The Batman. Ben Affleck's Batman, we know he kills. The reason why he kills is he lost his son. He lost his one tether back to reality and sanity. Like, the person he was going to pass on everything to, the person who was going to become Batman after he was gone. He has no hope anymore. He had no plan. He had no redemption. He had nothing. He just became the monster that he went out every night fighting, and eventually probably ended up killing a criminal or two. And then, just like in Batman Forever, he went out into the night looking for another face, and then another, and then another, and then another. And then he woke up the next morning, and his entire life had become exactly the opposite of what he set out to do. And Matt Reeves can't really tell that story because he can't relate to that character. That's not his Batman. And, Ben Affleck kind of was painted into a corner because of Zack Snyder making his Batman a killer. And some people interpret that the Frank Miller Batman was a killer. And since that was the basis for the PVS movie, I mean, Ben didn't really get to show us what his version of the Batman was really going to be. But it definitely clashed with Matt Reeves' version. And that, more or less, is the story of how Matt Reeves rejected Ben Affleck's script, The Batman versus Deathstroke. But now I want to hear from all of you guys. What did you think of this? Do you think that Matt Reeves had the right idea? Did you still want to see Ben's movie, either as an HBO Max series, or as a comic book, or as a novel, or as an animated movie? Let me know in the comment section below. Really excited about the the Batman movie, because just all this stuff coming out about the animated series and how Batman's not going to kill, how it's established he doesn't kill, how people are going to try to push him to kill. Whereas they kind of did that in the Nolan movies, but we know that Batman killed ninjas. He didn't really kill anybody in The Dark Knight, but it's kind of like that Man of Steel thing where Batman killed, learned it was wrong, and then didn't do it again. But it's not the same as never doing it and, thinking about doing it, but not doing it. That's kind of what we'll see with Matt Reeves. He's going to push his Batman, but his Batman's not going to give in. And I respect that. Later tonight, I have a special 20th anniversary live stream for Batman Vengeance, which released in 2001 and be over on my other channel as an Ultimate Selects. There was a really funny Batman short that also released on my Let's Play channel. Links to those are in the description. Please support those if you want to. And I will have another Batman video for you guys this weekend. Thanks so much for listening to the interview of Matt Reeves on how the Batman was created. This has been, of course, the O1 channel, your source for all things The Dark Knight in TV, video games, movies, and occasionally comics. Later, Gothamites.